I do like she and her.
Good. So let us take some time to let our mind settle and our bodies quiet down from the interest of coming together and connecting with each other and having a few moments of kindness, looking across the screen at each person that is here in our Sangha. And I always like to start with the refuges, paying homage and to the refuges. And so if I'm happy to share it on my screen if you'd like to do it along with me. Let me see where I have put it. I've stashed it in so many places. Okay, there it is. And if you don't, that's fine too. Let me see if I can find it right there in my notes. You can see my messy note section, but there it is. And if you'd like to do it along with me, do. I'm going to start by ringing the bell. As we allow the sound of the bell to come to our ears, we can notice that it does have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But it's the call to the Dharma. And if you want to read the English on the right-hand side, whether or not you are saying the Pali, we won't do the precepts. We'll just do the homage and the refuges. Acknowledging the Buddha and taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Having the teachings presented to us from the Buddha who for 2,500 years ago saw for himself complete freedom and was willing to teach it. And he didn't have to. That's a very rare opportunity. And we take homage in the teachings that he brought that were taken from generation to generation, from Sangha members, monastics, monks and nuns, lay people, and that Sangha of people has made it to our doorstep, and may we continue having gratitude. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranam gacchami. Dhanang saranam gacchami. Sanghang saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi dhanang saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi dhanang saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranam gacchami. So I'll stop sharing, and we can just take this time to begin to bring our busy minds, if they've been busy, and our probably busy bodies as well, and just try to bring them together in one place. We may notice as we begin to settle that the breath is a long breath or the breath is a short breath. You may notice that on the exhale and on the inhale. We do this to bring ourselves into awareness, establishing mindfulness at the fore of our practice, that we know if we're breathing in a short breath, or we know if we're breathing in a long breath. Without controlling it, we notice. And if you have a practice that you're used to practicing, you can just let my words be hearing, sound coming to the ears. And I will just do some gentle guiding with some reminders of beginning to calm the body. We can feel the breath through our body. We may feel it at a single point, like our nostrils or the chest or the diaphragm. Or we may feel the body breathing, the whole body. Wherever you feel the breath most predominant. At first, that's our object of awareness. And at first, we establish some concentration by having our attention on a single object. That of the breath, or it could be at a touch point. We may notice the seat on the cushion. We may notice where our hands are pressing against each other or what they might be resting on. We may notice pressure sensation at the lips or the eyelids, where the hands rest, perhaps where the feet are. Any of these points could also be a reference point for a single object of our attention. It's easy to use the breath because it's with us all the time. So when we're in other forms of walking or moving or doing things we need to do, then we can quite often have our awareness on our breath. So whichever we choose, whether it's the breath at the nostrils or the diaphragm or a touch point, as the mind wanders, we bring it back to this single object. Gently, kindly, building concentration. Calming the body, stabilizing the mind. And we can see for ourselves when we get distracted. We look to our own experience and we find the ability to cultivate freedom from suffering. And we do this one breath at a time, being present with what's arising. We want to relax and be aware without having expectations to try to control the experience. We're just with the breath as it arises. We may notice it at the beginning, or we may have awareness of when it ends. We may notice that it's changing and it disappears on its own. And we can notice all of this gently and quietly, observing, watching and being aware, just paying attention. We want to be aware to keep mindfulness continuous, which is why we don't need a lot of energy, just the right amount of energy, putting into each moment. We may notice thinking arising. We could make a soft, gentle note about thinking. We may notice some of the hindrances arising of restlessness or tiredness, doubt, grasping at how we want this meditation to be, or pushing something away, not happy with the way it is. We notice this, but we bring ourselves gently back to the single object. We have the object of what we're aware of, the breath or the touch point, our experience, and then we have awareness itself, seeing, being with, knowing the experience. one object of the breath or the touch point for some time. And sometimes we may become aware of a couple of objects for some time. The objects may change. You might notice something at a different sense door, or an object becomes more or less in your awareness. But what is important is that we are aware. We see what arises. We may notice where it begins, or we might not notice when it begins, but when we notice when we're in the middle of it, or we notice that it ends, all on its own accord. Arises, changes, and passes away. The mind can begin to be flexible. When we're in the right balance, we might be looking at one thing, the breath or the touch point, but we might know other things as well. They sort of impinge on our awareness. The main object keeps the mind energized, and that energy allows us to receive all the other senses as well. It becomes skillful means. As we all have noticed, the mind can be very unruly. And so just kindly and gently we're training the mind. We're training the mind to notice one object. We're training the mind to be able to open to other sense doors and what might come to hearing or seeing or tasting or touching or smelling. And we're aware. Everything we experience has to come to us from one of the sense doors. So we see the object as it arises, and we're aware. We know, we have the knower, knowing the objects. holding ourselves kindly, gently, with compassion. If we notice that something's uncomfortable and we may need to move, we just notice the intention to move before the moving. And then we settle in again on the breath or the touch point. We may notice restlessness or aversion. We may notice sleepiness. All of this we can be aware of. We're being generous to ourselves. We're holding ourselves kindly, gently training the mind. To stay on a single object, to notice changing objects, doing it in a relaxed manner. Stilling the body, calming the mind. There's a kind of joy that naturally arises. A joy of being in the practice, a joy of engaging in the practice. And that joy can turn into a happy comfort of body and mind. Sukha, the opposite of dukkha. We can balance it all with kindness. Being gentle and kind with ourselves as we stay present in the moment with whatever arises. Bringing ourselves gently back to the single object of awareness if things get a little too chaotic and we don't know where we are. Just come back. We can learn to have the awareness just be a light touching of the objects. We're aware of the awareness. The mind can relax its focusing on the single object and just lightly touch them. We're investigating what is happening in the mind right now. We stay alert and aware. develop patience, for mindfulness to be present and awareness to see what arises. Noticing, arising, changing, passing away of what comes to us through one of the sense doors. We can trust this practicing of gentle awareness without putting a lot of effort into what we're doing, so we're not exhausted. We're developing skillful states of mind. We're developing wisdom. Letting go of confusion and delusion. Letting go of grasping onto sensory happiness. And we find genuine wisdom, happiness. Comes from insight. The insight of anicca, anatta, and dukkha. And taking this experience of being with the breath and being in a kind of spacious awareness, if that has been accessible, bringing the concentration and the awareness that we've been nurturing, and allow it to settle in our heart center. Wherever you find that in your body. Holding ourselves gently at our heart, or feeling our breath in our entire body. Maybe bringing to mind something that is very pleasant. It may be one of those cats we saw in the pictures, or it may be a place in nature that we really enjoy. It could be a young child playing. Could be our favorite soft fuzzy thing, whatever that is. Or a song, a piece of music. nurturing and encouraging whatever can make us feel open-hearted. That we can feel at ease. That we can wish ourselves to be at ease. This practice is not always easy. We want to do it in a relaxed manner and at ease. Whether we're doing insight practice and observing and investigating what's happening, or whether we're doing more of a concentration practice with the Brahma Viharas, if we choose Metta, we just hold ourselves gently in this spaciousness, wishing kindness to ourselves. And letting these warm wishes, thoughts of well-being, flow out to someone else that we want to send this kindness to. It could be a teacher, a relative, or a friend. Wishing in gladness that they be free from suffering and have happiness and the causes of happiness. That they may be safe and protected and have ease in their lives. And gathering the energy of kindness for ourselves and kindness for our benefactor or close friend. Let this heartfelt energy radiate further out to a neutral person. Could be someone here in our circle that we don't really know. It could be someone that we've seen recently on TV or crossing the street. Just as I wish to be happy, I know that you also wish to be happy. May you have ease in your life. May you have well-being. May you have happiness and the causes of happiness. Unconditional feeling of kindness that can arise toward the neutral person. And letting this kindness flow to a larger group of neutral people. Healthcare workers, social workers, physicians, nurses, support staff in hospitals, psychological staff, all the people that have been serving us recently, helping us make it through the pandemic easier. Grocery store workers, drugstore workers. May all these beings who are serving others find moments of freedom from suffering. May they notice moments of happiness. May we send unconditional happiness, well-being, not conditioned on their response. May you be at ease. And as it was taught in the Karyana Metta Sutta, let this kindness go in all directions. The north and the east, the south and the west, above and below, in all directions, everywhere. May this unconditional goodwill and kindness radiate in all directions from our hearts to those seen and unseen, known and unknown, those in suffering and those in joy. Those enlightened and those unenlightened. May all beings everywhere have happiness and the causes of happiness. Find freedom from suffering. Understand, whether they study or not, by experience, the Four Noble Truths. May we all see craving, understand its nature, and know that we can let it go and there's freedom from it. All conditioned things arise and pass away. Seeing this clearly brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upakitawa meruchanti te sam vipassamo sukho. Letting the eyes open gently, noticing light when it comes in. That's when we start making conditional existence appear before our very eyes. making things solid. Sending kindness to each other in our square circle here on Zoom. Facebook, who knows, my face might be sideways. I don't know anymore. I guess I'll find out later. And let your shoulders circle, let your head circle. Try not to notice all that crackling and popping. Well, go ahead and notice it. After all, we're mindful of everything. Wiggle in your chair. Pick up your water and swallow it. Cheers to the new year. Just like Valerie said, it's another day just like every other day. And we toggle back and forth. That was a good word, Valerie. Toggling back and forth between noticing dukkha and holding ourselves gently. That's why I like putting together Vipassana and Metta. We can investigate and we can hold gently. So let's take a few moments just to share, if you'd like to, how the practice was for you just now, before I get into a little bit of monologue. I'd rather have a little dialogue, if there is such a thing, and someone feels like saying that they liked or didn't like something, or how their practice was just now. Anyone feel like sharing anything? Oh wait, Jerry, hang on. I always forget. I have to turn my speaker back on to hear. It goes dead. All right.
I did remember to unmute. So, wow. That was delightful. So, please, well, just happy that I was able to be as mindful as I was, despite not having had a sitting this morning. Just something I'd share is that about the practice, when I'm practicing a lot, is when the mind is not very busy, not much thinking going on, or attachment or aversion. I've reading this book. I've actually read the book by Guy Armstrong called Emptiness. Wonderful book, just magnificent. Really has been helpful, speaking of 3 characteristics and just kind of understanding at a deeper level about the Dharma. So really, my object of awareness more is a practice that he recommends toward the end of his book, is awareness itself, as you mentioned at one point. And sometimes going back and forth between that and if the mind is emptiness. And it's been just a great practice. So not as much attention, not as much use of the breath as the primary object, or whatever arises as the primary object, but rather the just awareness itself. And yes, there are times when thoughts arise, and I notice the thoughts, and they pass away. So I just wanted to share that because it's been so helpful to me in the past, month or so. I've been practicing that a lot. Not always possible to do that when the mind is busy, but when the mind is quiet. So.
Thank you for that, Jerry. I'm sure it's very encouraging for people to hear. A lot of us are busy-minded a lot of the time, and it's always nice to hear someone say, there are some moments when the mind doesn't have to be quite so busy.
Actually, I've had a somewhat busy day. One reason I didn't go meditate this morning, so I went skiing, and it was challenging at times, and I had some aversion to the conditions, the snow conditions. So, but trying to stay with that and just accept it. That's the way it is. And but I'm just even almost surprised that I had as much energy and I was felt as awake as I was during that meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else feel the bubbling to share their last half hour or however long that was? Or anything else that may be coming up in your sitting practice? Valerie?
I'm finding that I'm being less judgmental with myself when thoughts arise. When I started back in March, I was noticing like every time my mind would drift, it was more like, not really scolding myself, but also like really wanting to get back to being able to not be thinking about something, and then another thought would immediately come in, and I'm noticing more time in between the thoughts. At tonight especially, I'll have a thought and then I'll catch myself with the thought and I'll let it go, and it'll be longer in between before another thought shoots in.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's provoked from noises that I'm hearing around. But even that, being able to let that go. Mm-hmm. So towards the end, I noticed my body clock getting yawny. And I notice that in the morning too, because I just wake up with Robert in the morning to join the group. And so it's like that melatonin thing also I feel kind of kicks in with the time of day being dark. Anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Valerie. Sherry.
Hi, Candle.
Hi, Sherry.
I just wanted to say that this was really one of the best sits I've had in a month since I got my knee surgery, and it's hard to attend, as you know, and as anybody that's had any kind of surgery and is still on drugs and things like that, all of a sudden you're just somewhere else. I mean, you don't even, no matter how much you try to kind of be more present. So that was lovely, and I must disengage now and let everybody know that it was a really lovely sit that I had, and I thank you. And my knee needs ice at this point, because that's what just like hello, goodbye. So
thank you, Sherry.
Everyone have a good rest of your evening.
Great to have you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Joan.
Oh, Candle. I had difficulty focusing. It was almost not that I don't love hearing your voice and love hearing what you have to say. And I think much earlier when we were meditating together, I said I didn't like it when somebody was silent. And now I really needed the silence because I kept being distracted by what you were saying. And I was trying not to be hard on myself and just try to bring it back, but I couldn't focus. Mm-hmm. So I think that happens, often, and we usually get so anxious or eager to please ourselves, not just the person who's talking. So
Yeah.
how do you handle that? I know the other night when we were doing it at New Year's Eve, you said it was so lovely to have some real quiet time when
Yeah.
Robert was leading us.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about this before, and I'm curious to know more what you have to say.
Yeah. I vacillate back and forth between how much guidance I give and whether it's nice to just be silent. And because of different levels of practitioners, I often find that it's helpful to give a few clues throughout. And then I'm sort of like you. I wish that I would make more silence sometimes. And it's also a question like if we did it for, say, 45 minutes instead of a half an hour, I would probably put in more silent time at the end. And it's always a catch-22 for me of how much to talk and how much to stay quiet, because there's so many variables. Since we aren't the same group that gets together all the time with the same members in it to develop, any sort of quote progress of insight or whatever. But as a practitioner on your end, that's why I sort of say in the beginning, let the sound of my voice just be practice of sound coming to the ears. And if that's hard to do because you have aversion to it, you either make that the practice, aversion is arising, or you press mute on your computer and you don't listen to me talk for a half an hour. And then you just notice when people are moving around again, that means I'm probably done. That's one idea. And it's kind of a practical one. Sometimes I know the guidance can get a little agitating because you want to just do sitting. And on the other hand, you can also do sitting that's quiet on your own when I'm not here. The other half an hour during the day, in the middle of the day, or in the morning, or so it's a juggling act, trying to decide how much to say and how much to not say.
And it wasn't because your voice was irritating or what you were saying was irritating. It was really more me not being able to focus,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just take off. I don't even know what you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you just gently bring your mind back when you go, oh, look, this was restlessness. The mind is restless. It's going off and doing these other things. I don't even know what she's saying. Now I'm just going to come back. And this is where the cultivating of a single object, of the breath or the seat on the cushion or something, comes in handy, because the more we go back to the single object and bringing awareness to it, watching that object disappear, and awareness disappears until the object comes up again, that creates concentration. And the more we repeat that and create the concentration, then the more the mind becomes more stable. So sometimes what I do if I'm roaming off in thoughts and I find investigating sort of boring, or I can't stay with something for very long, I will switch over to the phrases of loving kindness, because that will also give my mind a repetitive thing to do to make it stay more centered. Because it does have to be, you do have to develop stability in the mind and stillness or some calmness in the body for the next level, which, Michalina, you might be thinking about what you were calling giddiness. Sometimes joy can arise in the practice, which is called piti, and that joy has an attraction to it. It also has an agitation to it. But still we just stick it out. And so as we notice this kind of joy and kind of sort of mental activities that are occurring, and there could be agitation in it, as we keep awareness happening over over time, or we just watch it. It arises, it passes away. There might be a calmer kind of happiness that's a more stable sense of a comfortable happiness that is sort of a smoother feeling than the agitated one. So I don't know. I'm rambling now into how when your mind goes off being restless and you don't know where you are, you just come back to someplace else in the body and go, okay, what's happening in the mind right now? You just start over. Anybody else? Any comments? Doug, how did you do there? Oh, good. You're going to raise your hand. I don't have to put you on the spot.
Somebody mentioned, or several people have mentioned Robert. Who's Robert?
Robert Beatty, and I'll put this in the chat box later. Robert Beatty is the founder of Portland Insight Meditation Center, and several of the people here in this group attend his Zoom meetings, which he has at 7:00 on every morning except Saturday. And there are other teachers at PIMC who also teach different evenings during the week. There's something going on, I think, every evening except Saturday. And I've been contributing there now recently on the first and the third Sundays. So some of the people here in the group are used to going to other groups at PIMC, where Robert has founded it in Southeast Portland.
So I thought it might be Robert Beatty. I went to my first meditation retreat in about 1989 at Bright Bush with Robert. And I've said a lot with Steve and Kamala at Cloud Mountain. And I have been sitting with another group anyway, I just wanted to comment that, causes a condition. Sometimes I prefer silence, but the chanting that I've done a lot with Steve and your instructions that are, I just felt like, feels like home again.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Steve and Kamala have been my teachers for a very, very long time, and it's nice to bring in a few people. Jerry practices with Steve and Kamala. He just got back not that long ago from a month-long at the sanctuary on Maui in November. And so we have a mixture of various people that come. Some people have known me from the past and came to my Monday sit that I was doing once a month, and I still do the Monday sit, only now it's the second Monday of the month instead of the first Monday of the month. So you can sit with me on a Sunday, a Monday, and a Sunday if you feel like it.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you here. I know, sometimes I think, okay, I'm not going to sing that last chant, but I can never stop myself because I have Steve's recorded voice in my mind every evening at the end of any sitting, singing that chant. And, I mean, it is so true that I just not say it, Anicca Vata Sankhara. All conditioned things arise and pass away. And that's what we're seeing. Moment in and moment out, the condition of things. When you start to talk about what conditioned things are, conditioned things are those that we see arise, they change, and they pass away due to conditions. And so, having that in that chant, all conditioned things arise and pass away, it's like stating the obvious, but we We only can find it by doing the practice. So even Joan, whose mind is, wandering off and doesn't know what I'm saying, it's just another arising and passing away mind state that we don't have any control over, and we just watch it arise and pass away. And seeing this clearly through mindfulness, seeing it clearly, which is, what the Buddha told us to do over and over again, see things just as they are. Seeing things clearly brings the greatest happiness. And the greatest happiness is peace. So I can thank Steve for doing that over and over again in retreats on Maui and at Cloud Mountain. And I like the chant. So I guess that could obviously sort of lead us, unless Michelina or Luba, do you have anything? Oh, good. Go ahead, Michelina.
Kendall, I was wondering if you would chant that chant again a few times, because I'm not familiar with it and I'd like to hear it.
Sure. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya dominu upakitava meruchanti te sam vipassamo sukho. All conditioned things arise and pass away. Seeing this clearly with mindfulness brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. Anicca vata sankhara upadavaya domino upakitava meruchanti te sam vipassamo sukho. I can't remember what sutta it's actually in, but I can find it at some point in time, probably pretty easily. And Steve has it recorded from like the 90s on Dharma Seed. Do you know Dharma Seed's recordings? Oh, it's fantastic. dharmaseed.org. It has talks from 1987 on of teachers that have taught at Insight Meditation Center, at Spirit Rock, I think at Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City. Gil Fronsdale, he's in there. Oh, there's a whole lot of different monks and a whole lot of different nuns. But, it used to be the Dharma Seed tape library. So that tells you how far we've gone. It was the tape library, and, then people probably downloaded them and made CDs, and now it's just all MP3s that you can download. They used to send you tapes for free on donation.
And how would I could I find that through the English translation?
I'm going to look back in my notes. I know that I have it. Let's see. You know what? I will send you. Do I have your email address? I don't know if I do.
I sent you an email earlier today, so you do.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Then I do.
Great.
I will send you it and the English translation.
Thank you.
Yes. Let me make myself a note.
Are you saying Dharma Seed?
Yes.
Seed, SEED.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Michelina chant. Okay, I'll remember to do it. Luba, go ahead, unmute yourself. Or shall I do it? There.
Okay, I did. It's my first time. Like Jerry was saying, he didn't meditate this morning. I didn't either. It was the first time in months. And I just decided to take advantage of the sunny day. And then we went for a walk instead of meditating. And I also didn't attend Robert's Sunday session that I usually do for the same reason. We went out. So this was a very nice treat for me. Thank you, Kendall, and thank you, everybody, for being such a great Sangha that I'm happy I found. It was different. because I'm used to, of course, meditating in total silence, and I'm not used to hearing a lot of instructions. But I because I didn't want to hear a lot, I just made my primary object. It was the sound. It was not you talking, it was the sound. So I hear the sound again. And it kind of went into this image in my head that has been haunting me for a while since I read. I go to secular Buddhism group with Novrasheta, and he had in his book had this image of impermanence. Everything is impermanent. Like a child building a sandcastle, which you can't really invest much because the wave will come and the sandcastle will be blown away. And in the beginning, this image made me incredibly sad because if you think of your life as a sandcastle, then how do you live it? How do you live it in the now if everything will be washed away by a random wave? But then I incorporated this into my meditation, and when the voice would arise that I didn't really need for my meditation, it would be like a sandcastle, and the wave of meditation will come and wash it away, and I could be focused and meditate. And that really worked for me. That was wonderful. And I like this evening time too, when and this is something that has been on my mind a lot, and I wanted to ask everybody here, and I don't want to take a lot of time, but what do you do when your spouse is totally on a different mindset than you are? How do you do it? I mean, I love my wife dearly. She is the best person in the world. But also, class, when we were talking about her way of expressing love is so yeah, I dread the tree because they're gifts that I don't need. And at the same time, I can't deny her the joy and happiness of giving it. So, and now I'll shut up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Luba. Those are lots of challenges.
I can relate to that, Luba. I have a husband who's not at all interested in meditation, but is so grateful that I'm doing it. He doesn't resent the time. And I think what you have to do is maybe find something you share together, and you have. You said you took this lovely walk together, and then let it go. You know, it's it's what we need, and they don't. And
oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, I hear you, and thank you for sharing your experience. This is what I do. She supports me every step of the way with that. Mm-hmm. Like right now, she went upstairs to read so that I can have this time. We share everything, but we've been together for forever, and I would like to share this. And it's just not something that is happening. But yeah, it just to accept it. But thank you, Jean.
I can hear you, Luba. It's very challenging when you have something that's different from your partner's, and sometimes over time, because of who you are and how you're radiating whatever it is you're doing, it sometimes wears off and the other person is somewhat interested. But in other situations, people just have completely different personalities, and they may not have any kind of spiritual bent. The best thing that I can say is that it all becomes practice. I'm sure you get tired of noticing aversion or disappointment or grasping and clinging to an idea of hope that she would be a different way. It's the practice of a householder. It's just part of our practice as householders to give as much conditional love as we can to ourselves under distress about it. And I think also to be able to find that it's your sacred space to do your own practice. But it's very hard. I can certainly appreciate it. Yeah. And I'm sure as a therapist, as you were when you were somebody, and as Doug, who's probably currently a therapist, you know a lot of answers. What would you tell yourself as a client? But that does not cut through what, if you just keep looking at it deeper, which is probably you see disappointment that arises, or sometimes you see anger that arises, and it's all the hindrances. They show up, in so many ways, whether you're alone or with somebody, and it's all the practice.
Yeah, and I appreciate your thoughts, and I also appreciate that she's very supportive. I mean, she built me a meditation place outside, which is wonderful. And then every now and then she does make a comment like, "You changed, and I enjoy it so much more." And I'm trying to, yes, I know I worked as a therapist for a long time, but that's in the past.
Right.
And I don't want to be my own therapist anymore. I stepped away from it. I like being a nobody. But yeah, thank you.
Yep. I mean, it does kind of get back to the three characteristics of, conditioned phenomenon. That conditioned phenomenon has these three characteristics of, arising is evident, and vanishing is evident, and changing while persisting is evident. And these are conditioned phenomenon, and it's the world we live in. We live in the world of conditioned. And, the unconditioned phenomena, no arising is evident. There's no vanishing, and there's no change. And that is something that we sort of strive for in our regular practice, if we, talk about striving. But just being born into, conditioned phenomenon is the way it is. And so all of these things that are noticeable to us, that are, going to show us the impermanent nature. I mean, I'm sure just even as you talk about it and sit with it, that you notice you're changing attitude about it just within one sitting, where you'll have a joy about something or a sorrow about something, and it might turn right around to the opposite in the same sitting, or it'll rise and pass away and you won't be attached to it at all anymore. It's just so amazing to really keep looking moment to moment without grasping on to what the moment is presenting, to just seeing it as arising and passing, arising and passing, arising and passing, and that there's no I, me, or mine in, the conditioned, even though we grasped onto it and we tend to have it be I, me, or mine. Doug, have you got any useful thoughts for Luba? Or are you on a break tonight?
I'm just really appreciating your thoughts about it. That seems like wise advice.
Then, there's always the typical ones where the thing about the Christmas presents, like you have a psychological interaction, like, I don't think you're hearing me. That those are other issues of how to have conversation. I mean, I do this with my partner, and I can't say how many times I sort of have fatigue, kind of fatigue that it's really interesting to notice. And probably, Joan, it probably happens to you too. I don't know about you, Michalina. We all have various stages of partnership, but the repetitive thinking that arises around an issue that is probably not going to change or go away, and my attachment to that line of thinking and the constriction that it causes me in my mind to get smaller and smaller while I'm clinging to something that I wish would change, and I don't think it's gonna, and I'm not letting go of it, and they're not changing or letting go. It's fantastic practice. And even when I go, okay, I'm sick of this, I can notice something about that, I have aversion about it. Before I had attachment to it. Now I have aversion about it. It's the constantly arising and passing away of each thought that's constricting me and keeping me from opening up to a gentler, kinder approach to myself. Now I think I've babbled on a little bit too long. Does anybody else have something they want to say?
I'm also a therapist, by the way, and I have a few thoughts about it. One is with couples, I often remind them that you can't change your partner. So accepting your partner the way they are, accepting a person the way they are, is a practice, of course.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But it sounds like you're doing a pretty good job of it, by the way. You've been together years and years, as you said. So I think you probably are. You are accepting, and you're appreciating her support. So it sounds like it's just a desire, maybe, that it would be nice to share the practice because it means so much to you, and that she just doesn't happen to have the interest. And if you don't, interest and curiosity are, I think, a big motivating factor in practice. So an interest in just investigating ourselves, noticing when we have aversion and desire and that sort of thing. So if she doesn't happen to have that interest, then that's her personality, and I don't know. But I think it is helpful to. So I don't know. There's real.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I also have a question to Doug and to Jerry. Well, I see that Doug is a therapist and he has a cat. I have a couple of cats. Do you have cats too, Jerry?
I have a cat.
There we go. I found something that we all have in common.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
And
she's a sweetheart. She's a real sweetheart. But yeah. I wanted to say something about the Sangha. You were talking about the refuges, and what I really forgot to mention was my gratitude for this. This is only my second meeting, but the meditation, I think it was helpful to be sitting with others in the Sangha, because I don't often have the discipline to do it at this time of the day. I usually meditate in the morning, and I was really pleased and surprised that it was like that. But I think it's partly because of the support of the Sangha. And so I just wanted to say that. And also this conversation, it's really sweet.
Well, I appreciate everyone's vulnerability. And, I'm going to say one more thing, Luba, in terms of as you investigate deeper what your reaction or desire is, and kind of clinging toward how you would like to have that togetherness, I think there's also, when you look at that another level, you look at sadness and maybe a sense of loneliness, that some portion of how you want to communicate with your partner isn't fulfilled. And, as those emotions, there's so many emotions that arise when we're clinging onto something, that there's no end to the depth that the practice can go in whatever's arising, to actually see it as, arising and passing away, that we cause ourselves suffering by whatever emotion we're attaching to or thought pattern we're attaching to, and we can see that, and we stay with it, and we hold it gently, and we might notice, well, okay, this one passes now. And sometimes there's moments of emptiness, that it's not just all anicca and dukkha. It's not all just arising suffering that passes away. There's also, an opportunity to notice those moments of anatta that are in between. They're so fast, but it's that moment in between when something arises and passes away, and before the next thing arises, right in there is the emptiness. So it's just more depthful, diving into what is really happening right now.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now we have a few moments of silence. That's nice. So I suppose we've sort of touched upon in very personal ways, that even if we contemplate even a minute, of the whole vast range of life, that we're faced with such a tremendous variety of life's manifestations, and it really defeats any kind of description, but we do our best at it. And I think we're doing a good job within the Sangha of it. And yet those three basic statements that can be made are valid for all animate existence. From the microbe up to the creative mind of a human genius, that the features come to all of life that were first found and formulated 2,500 years ago by the Buddha. I mean, when I think about it, I think, wow, that was 500 BC. They had centipedes this long and this wide with 1 million legs, in the forest, where they were trying to meditate and have loving kindness for all beings that could, bite and poison them. And there were wars, on foot and horseback, and it's not anything as spoiled as we are today with the ease at which we have the Dharma available to us. And the Buddha was called Loka Vidu, the knower of the worlds. And from going through so many levels of beings that he saw himself embody while he was in his stage of sitting under the tree and confronting Mara. And for him to come up with, these are the three things impermanence and suffering, and that we can access the magnificence of not self. I'm in awe of the fact that we really can even attempt to understand it within ourselves, and we do it in just this simple manner of seeing what arises and passes away, and creating more and more spaciousness and more open-heartedness for ourselves and each other, and keep the ball rolling. Meditate and carry on, as they say. Tempest, would you like to say anything? Mm-mm. Well, we've got a few minutes left. Shall we try some silent sitting? Okay, let's do it. Oh, maybe I better put a couple of, while you start your sit, I'll put in the chat box some Dana opportunities for PIMC for tonight, for the Sunday nights. And I did put, if you haven't looked in there, the dharmaseed.org link to Steve's evening chant. It was a long time ago, and he has like maybe 3 different things he says at the end of a sitting session usually. And so that chant is somewhere at the end of the 3 things that he's presenting. Shall we? Letting the busyness of the words settle down and noticing what's happening right now. And so we have the three marks of existence, or the three characteristics. These three simple truths, which characterize all things, are surprisingly transformative. Impermanence, anicca. This is the foundation of Buddhism. The Buddha said that all compounded phenomena disintegrate. All things are made of parts, and all things fall apart. Or a blunter way to put it is that everything dies. All of samsara is an attempt to deny this reality. There's suffering, dukkha. Every experience is marked by some quality of suffering, whether it's extreme pain or a background sense of unease. As long as we struggle to maintain a sense of solid self, our lives will be marked by stress and fear. Our struggle will always be unsuccessful because of not self, anatta. There's no solid, separate, single self. We have no core. We're simply the product of multiple causes and conditions. Impermanence describes how things are. Non-self describes what they are not. Thich Nhat Hanh said, impermanence is emptiness in terms of time. Non-self is emptiness in terms of space. And so we bring in kindness. We bring in metta. We hold ourselves with kindness and compassion as we experience these truths and find